Afternoon, everyone. Happy Monday. Happy Advent. It's also the 1st of December, new month. But we've had some breaking news before we get on to like Labour and the budget and stuff. Some breaking news. Jonathan C. Gullis has joined Reform UK. This is really quite spectacular. I don't know how much longer Reform UK are going to get away with claiming that they are fundamentally different to the Tories or Labour when they're cramming the place full of not just Tories. We're not talking about people who used to vote Conservative and now support Reform UK. That's just voters, right? This is specifically the MPs that Nigel Farage claims betrayed Brexit. These are the same people that he reckons were responsible for the disaster of Brexit. And he's welcoming them into his party. Like, for how much longer can they do this? But anyway, never mind that. Let's get rid of him for now. I will now have to discuss this tomorrow because I've already done my videos for today, because this afternoon, of course, I will be streaming all afternoon on Twitch as well. So we're in this for the long term. But yes, so Keir Starmer has, we can go through something. So someone's just, who's it? Sorry. Mr. Bull, they're saying, is this speech a good thing or a bad thing? Can't take much more bad comms. Tell me everything's okay. Well, I'm afraid I haven't seen anything of this speech, but I've read his article. He wrote a letter for The Guardian. The Guardian have published it. We can go through that. But what I'm going to say is this. So Keir Starmer, he's made some reasonable points, but he's ultimately saying this economic plan is going to take years. The problem is that phrasing's really bad. Yes, anyone who understands the situation knows that you cannot turn things around straight away. But people are impatient. Have Labour still not learnt that? You need to tell them. You need to tell them what's improving right now. Because right now the problem is, like, we've had some good news and bad news today. The good news is UK manufacturing is back in growth. Good. So it's sort of managing to get around Trump's tariffs, and that wouldn't have been the case if they hadn't have got themselves a decent deal with Trump. But we're also hearing, consumer confidence. Consumers are still not hugely confident, right? Because Labour are not giving them the confidence. And that is a self-defeating, self-fulfilling prophecy, basically. You're saying, oh, so this talk about, economic improvements in years' time, then people think, so not now, so I better not spend yet. I was like, can you stop? Can we stop? Because it's not like there's going to be nothing for years, then suddenly everything's going to get turned on at once. There are several things that are already better. They should be plugging that. And then talk about the good stuff that's still to come. That's how they should be phrasing it. This stuff is already better. This is better. This is better. This is better. But there's loads more to do. Let me tell you about all the great stuff coming online in the next year, right? You can say, this is all the stuff we've done in 2025. It's the end of the year now, right? This is all the stuff that we've already put right this year. This is the stuff that's going to get put right next year. That leads you into the workers' rights stuff, right? This is the stuff that's coming in 2027. This is the stuff coming in 2028. So you can then build up the idea that all the time things are getting better. So no, I don't think the comms is improved at all. Let's just start off with this. We'll just go through this together. We'll go through this thing of Starmer's together, right? So this is his article. I think I've posted this in a link in the description below. But we can go through this. So what he said is, so his thing is, although we don't know, this is just something that someone's put together. There are those on the left and right who only offer grievance. I agree with that. At the moment, nobody who is just trying to persuade you to be outraged at another part of your own society is going to offer you any solutions. It's just tribal warfare. Labour's getting on with the job of economic renewal. Great, but bring people along on the journey. Basically, what Keir Starmer's doing is he's getting people on the bus, putting blindfolds on them and saying, we're going somewhere great, but it'll take a while. That's not confident. But anyway, so what he said is, judge last week's budget in the light of our bold plans to sweep away red tape, tackle inactivity among young people, and pursue a closer trading relationship with the EU. So So we take those three things. This is the three things he wants to really pitch to the public, right? Oh, someone said they've seen the speech. Didn't think the speech was that bad. Okay, great. But I still think the general pitch, I'm basing this on his letter to The Guardian, which is the preamble to the speech, which I haven't seen because I've been really busy this morning getting all the videos ready. But let's look at three things here. Three things he wants to explain to the public. Bold plans to sweep away red tape. Okay, make stuff easy for businesses. Also, I think that's largely aimed at the planning reforms, getting stuff building. Tackle inactivity among young people. You can sort of see that as a help or a threat, can't you? That's supposed to be one of those things. For young people, it's supposed to be, we're going to help you get work because young people are really struggling right now. But it could also be a nod to the older people who are like the voters, right? To say, we're not going to let young people sit on their arse all day. So you can take, that's one of those little ambiguous statements, isn't it? But nonetheless, it's a focus on getting young people into work, right? Which can be taken as positive depending on how they do it. And then pursue a closer trading relationship with the EU. So it's positive that Labour, again, are not shying away from the fact that we need closer ties with the EU, because I've been a bit worried since May. In May, we had this great summit and it was all fantastic. And we had these great announcements that probably wouldn't have happened if it weren't for Trump. It sounded really good. But the bottom line is, in order for the EU to... They've sort of agreed, it's not written in blood, but they've sort of agreed to ease trade restrictions, you know, in a complementary way, like we're going to do the same, ease trade restrictions between the EU and Britain. But before they do that, they insist we stick to our word, that we prove that we're as good as our word. And what they have in mind is that we fully implement the Windsor Framework. Now, I'm not seeing a lot of talk about that at the moment. So I am actually quite pleased he's put that front and centre, right at the top there. Pursue closer trade relationship with the EU. It does, because I've been a bit worried about progress this year, and it does at least say that it's not dropped down the list of priorities for him. So that's fine. But then he says, at the budget last week, we made the right choices for Britain. Obviously, every government's going to say that. Cutting the cost of energy with £150 off bills, protecting the NHS and tackling the scourge of child poverty by removing the 2-child limit. We also ensured that the revenue we raised through taxes was done fairly, with everyone contributing, but those with the broadest shoulders contributing their fair share. Now, I will say on that point, so various tax experts have pointed out that it is indeed true that most of the taxes have been loaded up on the top 20%. So the top two deciles, that is the richest 20% in the country, or the ones with the greatest income, should we say, in the country. So that is the broadest shoulders. So from that point of view, it's fine. However, those same tax experts have also pointed out that the top 1% haven't really been hit. You've got the increase on tax on dividends, sure, but they've sort of really got away with it. Whereas, if instead of freezing tax bands, they're saying, they'd have actually just increased income tax, that would have hit the top 1% as well. So, but you can also understand the politics of why they don't want to increase income tax, even though it sounds like they got very close to it, because they promised not to apart from anything else. But economically, you would hit the top 1% harder with an increase in income tax, more so than freezing tax bands. There it is. We also, as a result of the choices we made, the budget created a more stable economic environment. That is true, by the way. The BBC's Chris Mason has backed them up on that, because Chris Mason has actually done an article, which we might have time to look through, on whether he thinks Rachel Reeves has lied, and the simple answer is no. He's gone through it in detail as well, and he did say that, remember, where Rachel Reeves got a lot of criticism from economists last year is she didn't give herself much wriggle room. So all it would take was a bit of a downgrade in the forecast, and she'd have to come back for higher taxes, which she has done. So now she's given herself more headroom, which is what economists said she should have done in the first place. She should have done it last year. I mean, if Rachel Reeves had announced all of this last year, it wouldn't have been an issue, right? It wouldn't have been a big issue. And she wouldn't have had to come back this year. So she's given herself that headroom that if things go a bit pear-shaped next year, then she's okay. And if they don't, then great. Says driving down inflation. Inflation is expected to go down next year, quite a lot. So whether their budget does that or not is moot, because they will be able to hail good inflation figures next year. The Tories at the moment are banging on about inflation, but come next year they'll have to stop, because come next year, assuming things go according to forecast, then the inflation will most definitely be lower than it was at any time when the Tories were in power, recently anyway, since Brexit, definitely. And government bond yields. That's also true, because the gilt markets did like the budget. As soon as it was leaked, early of course, the bond yields went down. That basically meant there was a lot of demand for them. So that means the cost of borrowing's down. The cost of borrowing is now down as a result of that. So that's all correct. He's not lying about any of that. Says this is vital for protecting our public services when £1 in every 10 by government goes on debt interest. Fair enough comment. Again, the lower the debt interest, effectively the yields, the more you've got to spend on other things. But there we go. Right, this is a pertinent question here. Have I done the maths on the energy cuts? Way I figured it only took £35 per month off £400 bills. I haven't, no. It will be worth doing that at some point. But there's no rush on that, because I don't think it's an imminent thing. But I haven't yet. And I did sort of say in my video earlier this week on the budget that although they say it'll be £150 off average energy bills, that can mean different things. I said in the video that can mean different things, so I still have to explore that. But there it is. But nonetheless, you'd still sell it if it genuinely is going to work out at whether it's £150 off average bills or an average of £150 per household. However it works out, you sell it anyway, don't you? But it is important people see it. Starmer's type is what he was begging for all prior to his tenure, with all the rotations of chaotic leaders since Cameron. Now we all complain he's not chaotic. I'm not so... I don't think complaining he's not... I don't want him to be chaotic. We just want him to be a bit more in your face. And to pay attention to what it is people care about. People don't want to be told there's great things coming, because they're sick of it. They were going back to David Cameron and George Osborne. It was all, austerity we're fixing the foundations. It's exactly what Labour are saying now. Green shoots of recovery. Every election they kept saying, oh, it's just there. Yeah, you can't see it yet, but we can see it. We can see it with our magnifying glasses, right? Our omnispecs. And it's there. You just have to vote for us again and it'll all be brilliant. And it never was. And then when people had got sick of that and they decided austerity wasn't going to deliver them, then it was Brexit. Oh, Brexit's going to do it. Brexit's the next. Oh, yeah, this is the thing. Oh, but it's, we just need to leave and then we need to do this, that, and then it'd be brilliant, brilliant. The public have had 15 years of being told that things are going to get better. In fact, we could go right back to Labour after the banking crisis, although Labour did actually make things better. They just didn't get enough time to prove it to people. So the public have basically had 17 years of governments telling them things are going to be great if you just be a bit more patient. They're sick of it. And Labour should understand they're sick of it. Stop making those arguments. They used to work. They don't anymore. Anyway, let's carry on with this. Says the budget builds on the action we've already taken to improve the economy, providing £120 billion in extra capital investment. They do need to keep plugging things like that. That's £120 billion of extra investment, public investment, that the Tories didn't have, right? In things such as roads, rails and energy, enacting the biggest planning reforms in a generation to back builders, not blockers, supporting the expansion of Heathrow and Gatwick. That's a bit more, Some people approve, some don't. And signing trade deals with the EU, India and the US. We haven't signed a trade deal with the US, just to be clear, by the way. That's not true. He would have been on... That's not true, sorry. He would have been on better ground if he'd have said agreeing trade deals with the EU, India and US. You could argue we've had some sort of trade agreement with the US. We have not signed a trade deal with them. Taken together, these have allowed us to exceed our growth forecast. They have exceeded their growth forecast. Yes. I don't think any of that is down to any of those three things. Well, getting the decent tariff deal with the US has helped. Yes, that has helped. Ironically, the one thing he lied about there, the US, is the thing that actually helped. The India trade deal hasn't exceeded growth forecast because that's not going to happen for ages. The EU, again, not really, because nothing's happened yet. And the OBR are unable to take the EU deal into account in their growth forecast, surely, because we haven't finalised it. Then it says, as I set out at the Labour Party conference, the government's purpose is nothing less than the renewal of our economy, our communities and our state. By doing that, we will end decline and restore faith in our country. We will take on those on the left and right who only offer grievance and whose approach would lead to further decline. I agree with that. Let me be clear. Again, no one is going to renew this country by telling one section of society to attack another section of society. It's not going to happen. It doesn't matter how you draw the battle lines. Battle lines do not create national unity and growth. Let me be clear, turning on the borrowing taps or returning to austerity, that is the politics of decline. I will not accept it. I mean, it's true. If you turn on the borrowing taps more than they already have, you will crash the pound. That's just going to destroy everyone. And austerity, obviously, is utter, even at the time we knew it was stupid, and now it's obvious. In a speech on Monday, I will place the budget in the context of the broader economic renewal on which the government will be judged at the end of this parliament. If we are to achieve... Now, here's where I've got a problem with this. So, one Angry Pagan's already said he's happy with the speech. But here's the thing. How much of the public are going to come across this speech? Because the problem with the way Labour are going about it is it's effectively... I'm going to present this thing to the media and then I'm going to hope the media pass my message on. No, the media are just going to pick out the bits that pass their message on. You know, most of the media in this country has an agenda. And that agenda is not informing the public, right? That's just the nature of the beast. It's privately owned. That is it. So he has to get the message out himself. How is he getting the message out himself? This is why we need things like a battle bus. We need send people around the country from Labour explaining to communities, directly to communities, how this is all working. Get the message direct to the people. Do it on social media. It's not... They have done something on social media. We do know that they're working with various social media creators, content creators, not on politics, in other areas. But that only gets a message out every now and then. Like if you've got a climate change content creator, then anything on their work on energy or climate emergency. So every now and then that message gets through to their audience. But where's the regular messaging? They need to do that themselves. Go through a few more comments before we carry on. 3 former Tories defect to Reform UK: Jonathan Gullis, Leah Nishi, Chris Green. Yeah, Jonathan Gullis is the famous one, though. Yeah. And if there are great things coming, they need to be more specific and provide some level of roadmap. Yes, 100%. But this is how you present the roadmap. It's like I say, you say, right, we've already done this. This is already better, right? You can say that this is already better. You can talk about the increase in income. You can say, the reason why the state's pension increased above the level of inflation is because the average earnings is now above inflation. We've been used to the state pension increasing by inflation in recent years because inflation was so very high. Now inflation is lower, but average earnings are higher. People are getting more money coming in. That is why state pension is increasing above inflation because of the triple lock. It's now been tied to average earnings because average earnings are higher than inflation. That didn't happen before. Then they can say, and we've also played our part by boosting the minimum wage 2 years running now above inflation, boosting public sector pay. They can talk about all that. That is all really good for a lot of workers, right? And your pensioners, you're hitting pensioners and workers at the same time in terms of, not hitting in a bad way, but, in terms of the benefits. So you can sell that. You can sell that for this year. Then you can talk about what's coming next year. So that's into your workers' rights. You're going to, and then you can say things like you're going to start to see a lot more building. You could, he could even say you've probably seen some building work in your area. That's because of our planning reforms. You're now going to see a lot more in the next year. Then he can talk about the best start centres that have already. He should be going round. Some of them have already been setting up. He should be going round to them to publicise that. Then he can talk about what's coming in 2027. By 2027, there'll be 1,000 best start centres set up in some of the most deprived communities there are. You know, he needs to hit these things. He could have talked. Did he talk? Did he mention about UK manufacturing being in growth again today? Did he even say that? Hopefully he did, but he needs to get the message out. But yeah, they do need to be specific, and they need to set out the roadmap. It's like, this is what's happening. This is what's happening in 2025. Sell that. Stop being defensive. Stop defending yourself against media attacks. Ignore the media attack lines. It's noise, right? It's noise. Talk about what you've done in 2025. Talk about what's coming in 2026. Talk about what's coming in 2027 and 2028 and 2029, because that makes it sound like you've got a plan, right? I don't understand why the OBR is necessary when it's so consistently in error. The errors, I mean, the thing is, the OBR are doing the best they can, right? Their error is relatively low, but the error is still huge by, it's billions and billions and billions, because they're being asked to try and work out what trade's going to be like in 5 years' time. Like that, you know, you can't do that. There's going to be different changes of government, of major. There's going to be a change of French government. That's going to affect things. There's going to be a change of US government in the next 5 years, somehow, of one form or other. Something's going to happen. Either America's going to become a dictatorship, or it's going to have a new president in 5 years' time. Like, how are you supposed to predict all of this? You can't. It's impossible. They do it as well as they can. Their models are actually pretty good, but they still have huge errors in them, because by the standards of billions, because of course it's impossible. And the reason we have them, however, was so that George Osborne could pretend that austerity was a good economic policy. So George Osborne basically created the OBR as a way of saying we're going to demonstrate that we're producing balanced budgets, as if balanced budgets are a sign of fiscal responsibility. So, yeah, we shouldn't have the OBR, but you would, after Liz Truss, you ain't getting rid of it. You wouldn't, you just lose the confidence of the gilt market. So we're stuck with it. We are stuck with it. It does its job as well. It's not like it's incompetent. It's very competent. It's doing the best it can reasonably do when it's been asked to predict things 5 years in the future. Labour needs to also explain how things that already exist work. It's insane that people have no idea what the two-child cap for UC even was, and what migrants can actually get in benefits. No, this, I mean, I've made an issue of this as well in my short today. Like Reform UK, for example, are going on about, oh, we're spending this amount of money on universal credit for foreigners. And it's like, yeah, most of that's in work benefits because they're on low wages, right? Are you arguing that we should massively boost the minimum wage? Is that what you're suggesting? Which is, of course, not what they're suggesting. What they're doing is conflate. They're getting people to think that benefits is for people who are unemployed. Obviously, unemployed people do get benefits, but most benefits are not for people who are unemployed at all. So, and this is the problem with universal credit. It conflates everything, and people don't understand what it is. I would argue a better system would be to separate it out again. Because it was supposed to be about simplifying the benefit system, and there's some logic in that, but that's not what it was for. It never did. It never simplified anything. It actually confused it. So I would say this: have a separate unemployment benefit. Let's be clear about what we're talking about when it's unemployed people. Let us be clear, because when anyone quotes a universal credit figure, that's not unemployed people. That's unemployed people, workers on low wages, pensioners on low incomes, because you can still claim universal credit. If you're a couple and one pensioner's above the state pension age, but the other isn't, you can still claim universal credit and as a couple. So effectively, the state pensioner can also be a universal credit claimant in reality. And then when you're both of state pension age, it's like pension credit then, isn't it? But then that's, that's the same sort of thing with a different name, isn't it? So I would say we're still in the process of merging benefits anyway, so it wasn't efficient. It's over. When was it introduced? Was it like it was during the coalition years, 2012, 13, something like that? It's over 10 years later, and they still haven't merged it all. It's been a right shit show. I would say at least separate out unemployment benefit. Have that as a separate named benefit. I know people will still then bash people who are unemployed. There's not a lot to be done about that other than to try and reduce unemployment. But stop allowing them to lump together workers with the unemployed and pretend that we're spending this massive amount of people on people who are unemployed, which we're not. Economics is an extremely complex science. Maths are all on assumptions of human behaviour and consistent market fluctuations. Amazing they can do it as well as they can. Well, it is, but then there is an element to which human behaviour is very predictable. Anyway, let's carry on. I'll miss that paragraph out because that's talking about this thing. Our growth mission will include a renewed focus on sweeping away unnecessary regulation. I don't really like that. But often it has been those on the left who have favoured regulation. Yeah, because regulation's good, right? It means that we don't have businesses taking the piss. But I do understand Labour's bind here in that they need to have things built. I think we're going to look back on this in 15, 20 years' time, and I think there's going to be some consequences for this deregulation of planning. But I do understand the political bind they're in. If they don't get a load of shit built, then they're knackered. But at the same time, I wouldn't be making the argument against regulation because regulation is standards. Regulation is standards. Who doesn't want standards? That is why I'm asking the Business Secretary, Peter Kyle, to tackle the type of pointless gold plating and unnecessary red tape that adds to costs and gets in the way of our industrial strategy. Now, here's the thing. There is actually some unnecessary red tape. You always do sometimes allow regulations to build up to the point where sometimes then older regulations are superfluous and you can probably get rid of them. Yes. But they're basing it on what the businesses who have to deal with it are saying to them. So there's effectively a lot of lobbying from builders and so on this. So I don't think they're necessarily just getting rid of unnecessary red tape. I think they're getting rid of some useful regulation. But again, I accept that they sort of have to at the moment. I just hope that if things do work out, that's a big if things do work out and they're in a better place in 5 or 6 years' time, that they start to look at the regulation again. Economic renewal also demands that we must continue to reform the welfare state. We inherited a failing system that left children too poor to eat and which wrote off young people as too sick to work. We must not accept either part of that failing Tory system. That's why we'll do more to help young people achieve their potential, because if you're ignored in your early career, if you're not given the support you need to overcome your mental health issues, or if you're simply written off because you are neurodivergent or disabled, then it can trap you in a cycle of worklessness and dependency for decades. Again, that's a sort of statement that you can see appealing to two different groups, but it's the details. What are the details? Are you going to... Because you can read that as it's supportive of people who struggle with barriers to work, but what you want to know is how are you going to remove those barriers? How are you going to remove the barriers? Someone's saying they're building with Grenfell reforms. So Grenfell is a classic case of why we need regulation. The problem with Grenfell, of course, is we did have the regulation and people broke the law and they still haven't been brought to justice, which is unforgivable. Anyway, it says this costs the country money. It does. If you have people who struggle to access work, that is bad for the country. It's bad for productivity. And it says, but more important, it takes away opportunity, ignores potential. Any Labour government worthy of the name cannot ignore that. That's why we have commissioned former Health Secretary Alan Milburn to make practical recommendations to help young people with health conditions access work. And it's like, okay, fine. Why didn't you do that in opposition now? Wasn't that I mean, that was always going to be a big issue, especially post-COVID. We knew that. Why are they only commissioning this thing now, a year and a half into their government? Why didn't they do it a year and a half before the election? Finally, we have, because there's actually honestly in the Labour manifesto, there's a lot of good stuff for young people. There really is. You've got these, like in terms of mental health. I keep saying mental health is one of the greatest scandals in this country, or actually a lot of advanced economies. We really don't have any major provision for mental health. I keep saying I've known a lot of people. Of course we have. I don't know why I have to say it as if it's remarkable that I've known a lot of people with serious mental health issues. Like, we've all known lots of people with serious physical health issues. So, of course, there's lots of people with mental health issues. And yeah, it is considered remarkable because people pretend it doesn't exist. Oh, it's just people who are a bit sad. They just need to book themselves up, right? So we don't have... I've not known anyone who's ever had any treatment on the NHS for mental health issues. Oh, they've had things prescribed to them. GPs have prescribed things for them. That's not treatment. It's not even management in some cases. It makes it worse sometimes. But I've never known anyone get treatment. Now, I know that must be treatment because there are psychiatrists in the NHS. But, I mean, what do they do? Or is it postcode lottery? Is it just because of where I am in the country there's none? But for whatever reason, there isn't any. But Labour in the manifesto have actually got the beginnings of some proper mental health support, but they're starting with young people. It's too big a task just to turn on the mental health fairy. So they're starting with young people. So there's a lot of good stuff in the manifesto, specifically aimed at young people. But if it's talking about getting young people into work, why didn't they get these recommendations before they came to power? It's just mad. They're looking into expanding health centres to 250, 100 more in the next couple of years. Yes, but... And again, I say in 2027, Labour should be able to start pointing some of this out, but some of it's already begun. Why aren't they going around the country? Why aren't they doing their press conferences outside a new Best Start centre? I know they're not actually set up yet, but they are going. They're starting. For the massive building programme needed, we also need not only to increase building material imports, but also invite more foreign builders. Yes, you need more people to make up the shortfall, but we're stopping foreigners. Yeah, I know. It's mad. It's absolutely mad. To build... Well, I suspect we're not. I mean, Labour are not... And they've never said that they're anti-economic migration as such, just that they need to get it down, which they now have done. I strongly suspect they will not be blocking the hiring of foreign builders, right? Because they need the building. Oh yeah, David saying a disabled claim universal credit as well. Yeah, but you are right. But again, people don't see disabled people. You know, in terms of the public narrative, it's people who are unemployed and people who are employed, right? It's already pretty clear the public are losing. And again, the reason why the public are losing a lot of sympathy for people who need help is because of squeezed resources. I may do a video on this. I may do another science based video on why some of the problems we have in society are as they are in a way that you should really get an anthropologist to explain. I'm going to talk about apes. I may do. We'll see. Maybe we'll do science on Saturdays or something. But it's ultimately it comes down to competing for resources. You know, when resources are squeezed, then you start to get tribal fighting, right? Fighting between groups for those resources, just like you would see of apes in the wild. We are apes. Humans are apes, right? Some apes are more peaceful than others. But there we go. When I've gotten through to NHS counselling, it felt like I was talking to a wall. They only give like 6 sessions. Been doing therapy private for a year and a half now. Not close to done now. I mean, both my stepdaughters have serious physical issues, and one of them more serious than the other. And they're constantly being booked in for tests at hospitals by their GP. They get to the hospital, made to faff around, then the doctor comes out and says they're not going to do the test on them because they don't believe there's anything wrong with them, just because they're young women. It's utterly ridiculous. Like I was reading something yesterday about how inefficient it is that like tests and stuff are being cancelled and things. What about the tests that are being cancelled when they turn up? When the patient turns up, they're there and the doctor cancels it, not because they're overworked, but because they look at them and go, you're young, you ain't got it wrong with you, piss off out of this hospital. I mean, that's inefficient, because you're going to have the test at some point because there's something wrong with them and you need to find out what it is. And it's utterly ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. If I was the health secretary, my number one priority would have been stopping that instantly. I would have said, if someone's booked in for a test, you do not cancel that test, right? I mean, I know, okay, if no one can physically do the test, sometimes tests have to be cancelled because of staffing shortages. But I mean, we don't have, if I was the health secretary, I would order it. Patient turns up for a test, the doctor giving the test does not get to say, you're not having this test because I don't think you're ill. They don't get to say that. A GP has thought there's something wrong with them, right? They are also a doctor. It does my head in. Utterly ridiculous, because that is wasteful. That hits productivity, because people have to take time off work to go to the hospital and then be told they can't have the test, but they're going to have the test or die because there's something wrong with them. Really works me up, that. We need to be like orangutans, intelligent and empathetic. So I'm not going to mention orangutans. If I do this video later this week, I'm not going to mention orangutans. I will mention bonobos. So if you don't know much about bonobos, you look them up. They're quite an interesting little ape. But physically impossible for us to have evolved like bonobos. Which is a shame, because they are the most peaceful apes. They are literally the most peaceful apes on the planet. They're really cool people. People? Apes? Whatever. They're all our people. But there it is. Right, we'll leave it there. I've got to get ready for my next stream, which will be at 1 o'clock, like in 23 minutes on Twitch. Link in the description below. Thanks for coming on, everyone. Have a great rest of December the 1st. And until next time, I'll see you later.